5 workshops associated with the Encore Entrepreneur Initiative. It's a particular pleasure of mine to kick this off here in Central Florida because it was with the leadership of Lisa Diltz and Diane Trees that our district council actually put together a proposal and a grant submittal to Urban Land Institute. We were awarded this proposal, the maximum funds that you can actually get in a competitive process. We beat out international submittals, actually. I believe the committee said there was over 50 submittals, and ours was one of 10 that were selected. So fantastic. We're thrilled to get it started. It's an aggressive program. Hopefully you picked up the flyer and saw that Diane and Lisa, our workers, are going to be holding workshops throughout the state of Florida and wrapping those up on the 6th, I believe, was the last one, April 6th.
Yes,
so
April 6th.
April 6th.
In Jacksonville.
So I'd especially like to thank our sponsors for this. Presenting sponsor is Diane Trees and UCF Metro Center. Thank you, Diane. The patron sponsor is Comp Spring and Lisa Diltz leadership helped bring this thing together. And I'm not going to take up any more time because I really want to dive into the subject here. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Lisa. Lisa, take it away. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. As Greg mentioned, today's workshop is the direct result of a grant that we received through ULI to really look at the 55 plus crowd and their intentions for retirement, what they plan to do in retirement, they plan to move, they plan to work, and begin to think about how that translates into the built environment. The goal of the workshop, this workshop, and the others we'll be holding throughout the state is we're putting together a report. But really, in each workshop, we've assembled a panel of experts across the 55 plus spectrum. And then we've got a great group of audience participants. We actually have more that are filtering in. I think we have about 45 or so that registered today. So there's a lot of pressure on you all to really kind of carry it until we get some more people coming in. Because this is incredibly interactive. We have, our experts here to help and contribute, but we are anticipating just as much contribution from the audience. And to really hear about what you're seeing, if you see this as a trend, if you don't, and where you're at in your area of specialization. In conjunction with the grant, we conducted a survey of about 1,000 people, actually it was a little over 1,012 people throughout the state of Florida that are 55 and above. And we'll be sharing the results of that survey. And that was, the goal of that was to go out and ask people, okay, when are you retiring? What do you plan to do? And begin to think about how that might translate into some potential solutions in the built environment and economically, financially, just how will that impact Central Florida and the state overall, since we know we've got a pretty large population of 55 plus. Diane and I and Kelly and I have talked about it, that there's not going to be an answer. This is really it's a collaborative session. Think about what could a realm of answers be. We don't know the answer, which is kind of the fun part. We've identified this as an emerging trend, and the question is what could happen. So there's no right or wrong answer from anyone here. It's really more of a collaboration of thought. Before I share the research, we would love to just reach out to the audience here and find out, a little bit about you, where you work, what you do, and why you signed up to join today's conversation. So.
Hi, I'm Susan Kane. I am with SC Advisors and with SCA Brokerage. I am a transaction coordinator for the advisors aspect and the broker associate for the brokerage. And I'm 55 this year, so I'm very interested in this topic and just here to find out what the trends are and offer my personal contribution.
Awesome. We will be tapping into that. Greg, what about you?
Yeah, I'm Greg. I'm actually a planner and a landscape architect, and a lot of the work we do is focused on planning for master plan communities, and many of those are for 55 plus communities or blended communities. And for me, the interest really lies in, okay, this is a trend where we have this occurring. How do we plan our spaces to make sure that we provide adequate facilities to let it happen? So instead of having, I'm envisioning, instead of having just a big, single-use ballroom or meeting room or something, maybe our amenity facilities need to have some different spaces, and if so, what are those spaces?
I'm Jim Hamill with Terracon Consultants, a national engineering firm. I'm here predominantly because I just turned 68 in September.
You look great.
I spent an hour and a half at the Social Security office yesterday. You know, so I'm kind of interesting to see what the thought is and see what I'm about to do.
See what you're about to do. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sandy Winkler-Amer, and I'm with Whelan Corporation. We're a general contractor construction management firm. And like a lot of contractors, we've become experts in multifamily developments over the last 6 or 7 years. And a little interesting tidbit there is that on the demographics on the multifamily, because there's so many wonderful amenities and such, I guess that's it, but the age of those folks renting now is gradually creeping up. It's getting close to, high 30s, early 40s. Is a big demographic. So I think it's a natural progression from doing that kind of multifamily into 55 plus communities. Because as we were talking earlier to somebody, is it 50 is the new 40 or something?
30.
Like
60.
30. Yeah. So there's that. My working part of me that is incredibly interested in this topic, and there's a lot of baby boomers that are going to need these kinds of communities. And I'm in the 6th decade of my life, and every single solitary day my husband and I talk about retirement. How many days now? So and then my parents are both in their mid-late 80s, and I've spent the last 2 years taking them from place to place to place to place to place to place all over Florida, trying to find somewhere where they can live and I don't have to be as afraid for them every single day about their care. So, threefold.
Hi, I'm Evan Vogel. I'm with Comp Spring as well. I work with Lisa, and I am here just to kind of see how the conversation goes. I think it's an incredibly interesting topic, and looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say.
I'm Diane Trees with UCF, and Lisa came up with this idea in the first place. And I think what intrigues me is, as having a healthcare background, I'm a nurse, I think that there's a much healthier, mentally, focus on people who are not looking just being in their 60s for healthcare and for, fear of losing facilities or homes. I think it's more, what is the next thing in life? I'm going to be 63, and I'm not looking at this as, I'm ready to curl up in my room.
Right.
My rocking chair is my children threaten me with. But, so I think that there's a whole dynamic aspect, and more people are approaching being healthy and a whole new world.
Yep.
Good afternoon, I'm Mary Hurley with Land Advisors Capital. I'm here for my own benefit and also to understand, the trends of our clients. We represent developers of communities, master plan communities, as well as a senior housing project. So I'm here, really twofold. I am an empty nester, single, 57. My son thinks I'm this dinosaur that works hard, but I'm really not, and I'm wondering if I'm following the trends. Am I setting a new trend personally, or am I just this anomaly that's out there and really no one knows what to do with me?
Well, there is that.
Yeah, there is that.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Phil Chakowski. I'm with PSI. We're engineering consultants. But I'm here mostly because my own personal interests. I'm one of the leading edge baby boomers. They go from 1946 to 1964. And there's 77 million of them. I'm studying them. I've read about 5, 6 books on them. And I have something great in mind for y'all later when I develop it. So I want to learn as much as I can about what the baby boomers are doing. They're living longer, for one thing.
Yeah.
That's my
I'm Diane Sears, and I'm here, I'm writing the white paper, so I'm going to all 5 of these meetings, with Kelly and Lisa. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is that, as Jerry Ross knows, I've been involved in the entrepreneur community here in Central Florida for a long time. And as my new friend Susan just reminded me and impressed me, I'm turning 55 this year. So all my friends and I are all the time. It's very interesting, and I'm excited to see what y'all come up with.
Hi there, Neil Shipsharan, David Weekly Homes. I'm a land acquisition manager for Central Florida. The timing of this initiative could have been better because I'm trying to lock down our first active adult community in Central Florida. So I'm grateful to hear the results, and hopefully that'll steer me in the right direction.
I'm Keith Lowe with Florida Hospital. My role is primarily focused on what we call Health Village, which is the 172-acre Florida South campus, and that is emerging as a innovation district as we're branding it. But we are, as you might imagine, acutely aware and concerned about this demographic and how the hospital and healthcare in general is going to respond to the needs of folks that want to age in place, age at home. Concept of hospital at home now becomes more relevant than ever, and a lot of other cool buzzwords that are being talked about.
Hi, Nick Rahman. I work for Zom. We're a multifamily developer. Offices all over the place now, but we always like to stay ahead of demographic trends and whatnot. So looking forward to hear what everyone has to say.
Hi. Good afternoon. Sorry. Eric Swanson from South Florida. Involved with ULI and here for two reasons. One, very interested in the topic. Clearly well into the baby boomer phase. And actually more interested in what a lot of people are talking about is the idea of the built environment around office, not living, but we are all working longer. So how do you where do you work? What makes sense for that purpose? Also involved in the workshop down in South Florida next week. So I'm going to learn from the experts on how to do this next week.
Hi, I'm Mark Trowan, and I actually am from South Florida also. I sit on the advisory council for ULI South Florida, Caribbean. I'm a developer with Brookwood Group. We do infill, mixed use, and urban walkable communities. We're very interested in learning, just as Eric mentioned, and the product that we build, we hope to obviously be ahead of the trend, and the very kinds of product that we build, we want to be alert to the opportunities, just like many of you here are as well.
And Yarvi just joined us.
Yeah.
So we were just going around and introducing ourselves and talking about our interest in this topic and just a little about yourself and your association. I'm guessing was from Tampa?
Yes. So my name is Yarvi Rodriguez. I work for Pulte Group, and the reason why I'm here today is we have a lot of initiatives. We own the Del Lab brand, so we build a lot of active adult communities, and I help support land acquisition. So as we start to build more communities in this market, we kind of want to understand a little bit about the research that Lisa did here.
My name is George Thompson. I work in the Tampa division. Very similar roles in Yarvi. Own the Del Lab brand, and we'll be building some more Del Labs in the area. So very interested in what you have to say.
Great. With that, I will jump in. One thing I forgot to mention in my introductions, I'm remiss to not thank Kelly Sykes for all of her help in putting this together. So thank you. All right. So let's see if I can get this to advance for me. Oops, I can see if I can see y'all enough to watch your script there. You know the magic trick, Diane, to just hit it. Oh, okay. That's fine. So I've got a slide presentation here, about 35 or so slides, and starting out with just the market sizing and trends of, really the question is why? Why did we put this together, right? And what if we saw some things that, started to kind of raise a flag and say, hey, this actually looks like there could be a trend. Then the survey characteristics of the respondents, I'll show you a little about people that answered. Their outlook on work and retirement, their outlook on homes and communities, and the potential impact on state of preferences. So really a sizing exercise of saying, okay, this many people said that they plan to move. What does that really mean? This many people say they plan to volunteer. What does that mean? So to jump right in here, if we look at the amount of, one second here. Let me size so you all can see everything. I'm sure you want to see the entire page here. Anyone tech savvy? Kelly, are you? Are you texting someone right now that's tech savvy? I just need to be smaller.
Lisa, are we gonna have access to this afterwards?
Yeah, I can,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. If you'd like a copy of this, just give me your card and I'm happy to email it out.
Terrific, thank you.
To the fifth page to the right of
Yeah.
this.
Let's see it. There we go. Perfect. It's answered all of my problems here. Okay. So if we look at the Florida population by age, 55 plus population is 30% and growing. So if you look at that where the blue starts at the top, and as a side note, the current population of 55 plus is about a little shy of 6.4 million in the state of Florida. Just in Orange County, it's right around 300,000, a little shy around 270,000. But if we look at this trend, and let's see if I can, there we go. You see that the stair step is moving down into 2040. So it's 30% now, and it's actually becoming an increasingly large portion, almost 40% into 2040. So it's a large portion of the population now, and will continue to be so. So we're seeing it continuing to grow. So the question is, well, you know, how much of this population accounts for the workforce? And the current employment of 55 plus population accounts for about 25% of Florida's workforce. So you see on the left here, United States, in each age group across the bottom, and the color that you're looking for where it starts to be this green bar here, 55 to 59, and then sliding over. In Florida, it's actually a slightly larger portion that's in the workforce. And so you really see where the shift happens is 45 to 54, and then it obviously steps down pretty dramatically to the 55 plus population workforce. And so what we looked at was the labor participation rate of the population that's 55 to 80 in the United States, and how has this been changing? And what you see is the 55 to 64 group, so 57% were employed in 1994. 17% of 65 to 74, and 7% of 75 to 79. If we fast forward over to 2014, we've now got 26% of people 65 to 74 that are in the workforce, and 11% of people that are 75 to 79 in the workforce. So again, we're seeing this climb up, and it's projected actually to increase into 2024. So a larger amount of people are actually continuing to stay in the workforce. Can you see any of this? The front row at the movies. I know, I thought about turning around to the front row. Yeah. And so then we looked at business formation. And so if you look at the amount of businesses that are formed by age group, there's an increase here from 1996 to 2015. So in 1996, 34% of the businesses started were by people 20 to 34. And now we look forward to 2015, there's actually been a jump over here in 55 to 64-year-olds. Now 24% of total businesses have been started by people in this age group. Which is a pretty dramatic increase rather, of people that are 55 to 64. So we're beginning to see that not only are they staying in the workforce, they are the ones that are forming businesses. And so that, you know, that, and I'll lead into that in a second, of independents or contractors and what that means. So 30% of independent workers, so this would be contract workers, people who could be termed as self-employed, are between the ages of 52 and 70, so almost a third of that population. What's interesting is if you look at surveys, they say that about 40% of the workforce will be contract or independent employees by 2020 or 2021. This is of people that have had or tried, so it's a little bit higher, 48%. About 40% are projected to be independent or contract. Now that's of all age groups, but we see that of those independent contract workers, about a third are 55 or 52 to 70 years old. And it's interesting because in our survey results, one of the questions we asked people was, do you intend to start a new business? And it was actually, it surprised us, it was a smaller portion said that they were going to start a new business. Because when we look at these results, there's actually a large amount of people that are still working as independents or contractors. And Diana and I were having this conversation. She was saying, you know, her brother-in-law does consulting, and he would never say he had his own business. And actually, within this survey, the question was asked, if you're an independent or contract worker, do you have your own business? And about 70% said, no, I don't have my own business. And I think, the thought is, business, I've got a staff, I've got an office space, I've got a business. And it is a business when you're, obviously a contractor, but that thought isn't, translated. And so in our research, it's like 3 or 4% that say, yes, I plan to start a new business. And we think actually it's going to bear out a little bit higher based on what we're seeing in the market, that there's more people that are, independent contractors can work from wherever, that they actually will be engaged in some capacity. And so it's perhaps the semantics or, kind of issue, because it appears to be pretty high as is. The percent of people that are self-employed by age group, so this is the percent of people by each age group that are self-employed. You see in 65 plus, 15% are self-employed. Now the blue bar is the amount of people that are actually in the labor force. So it steps down, you saw that before, after you did 55 to 61, 65 plus. It's a smaller portion that are actually in the labor force, and this is of the United States. But that the people that are in there are a much higher portion of self-employed. And this shows up in our survey too, because our survey was of people that are 55 and above, so it's a higher rate of self-employment of people that took our survey than of Florida overall. So if we look at the survey respondents, I mentioned we surveyed, it was an online survey we conducted in December, and there were a total of 1,012 participants. They were all 55 and older. And what we did was we balanced the survey respondents so as a portion of the total state. So we looked at the 55 plus distribution across the state, and we capped that amount by county. So we want to make sure we didn't get 80% of responses from Orange County, that we really wanted to be a equal representation of the distribution of current 55 plus throughout the state. And I mentioned this, but we found there's more details in the back in the appendix of gender, pretty well aligned between the state of Florida's composition of male and female. It was about 50-50 in the state of Florida. It was about 50-50 in our survey. Age distribution, that sort of thing. So I've got that in the appendix. But the big thing that jumps out is that 16% of people in our survey were self-employed, compared to 11% in Florida and 10% in the United States. And again, this is skewing because of the people that are continuing to work. We know again that 65 plus has a higher rate of self-employment. So jumping in on their outlook. So of the people that we surveyed, it was 1,012 people, 71% were already retired. And then we had just shy of 30% then that are somewhere in the workforce. And here's their aspirations of either plan to retire next year, plan to retire in 2 to 3 years, plan to retire in 4 to 5, in 6 years, and there's 5% that are never retiring. They're working forever. We then show it by age. So here's the stack of people that are currently retired. And so we see at the 66 to 70 mark, this is really when you see a pretty big jump of people, that almost 90% of the respondents are currently retired. And that usually that switch from 61 to 65, and that larger jump here to 66 to 70, versus the 55 to 60 group, 70% of people that responded are still currently in the workforce. And it is very interesting to see the plans for these groups and how they switch at this breaking point of 55 to 60 and 61 to 65 versus those that are in the older generation. And which I'm sure we'll hear from the experts here on the panel, of how that plays out with finances, where they were in the downturn of the housing market, the sandwich generation, that this younger generation is likely supporting parents and children still. And so there's some different financial constraints that are being played out here and seem to be then translated into a deferred retirement down the road. When we ask them what the estimated age of retirement is, you see the largest portion is 66 to 70. We know that nationally 63 is the retirement age. So just for the people that we asked, it looks like we're getting at least a 5+ year deferment of what's actually playing out on the national scene right now of retirement. And when we ask them, then we actually slice it out by age. So this is a little hard to follow, but I'll walk you through it. So we've got 55 to 60, 61 to 65, 66 to 70, 71 to 75, and 76. And when we ask them, what age do you plan to retire? So we slice this up by each age group. So 55 to 60, there's a very small portion actually of this age now that plan to retire within this segment. The larger portion, 61 to 65, is where they plan to retire, and 66 to 70. So you can see that large swath for both 66 to 70, for 55 to 60-year-olds and 61 to 65-year-olds, which is what we saw on the slide before, that largest portion in that stack. And then it starts to slide down. So your 66 to 70-year-olds now, they have plans for retiring 71 to 75. 71 to 75-year-olds, their biggest plans are 76 to 80. But the biggest thing, from the slide before that we see in this, because we know that these are the ones that are, most heavily in the workforce, that retirement does appear at least to be pushing out to 66 to 70. The people that are older that intend to keep working, they're a smaller portion of the current workforce. So the question was, what are you going to do? When you retire, what are your plans? And you can see that leisure is high on the list of these folks. So the leisure seems to increase with age, that there's greater plans for leisure. But the 55 to 60-year-olds, this is where, and again, a lot of these people are still working, 70% of them that we asked. But there's now a portion in there that says I'm going to work part-time. There's a pretty big portion of us equal to that wants to volunteer in the community. And then there's a big piece that says, I'm not sure, 20% of these people, they don't know. They'll see how it plays out. Maybe some of you will, I think, express your, in this group. We'll see what happens. And the 61 to 65 is where you see a slight jump up now, more leisure interest, and these things are being squeezed out. But still, part-time. So, I mentioned start my own business. It's a pretty small slice in there that runs through. Although when we go back to independents and contractors, we know they're there. So again, it's somewhat of a mismatch, I think, in perhaps terminology of business versus consulting. Those things not equating the same in the responses lines. So when we ask the people that intend to continue working in retirement or start a new business, this is either pursue part-time work or start a new business, what would be most helpful for you? What resources do you want? And so this is in stacking order of least to most important. So interestingly, the group lowest priority was access to credit. Highest on the piece was technical or computer assistance, and second to that was information strategies for dealing with tax consequences, which I think we all probably want at any stage of our life, right? And then a place to work. So this is, begins to play on the built environment, right? Of what does that look like? Is it a flexible workspace? Is it within the community? And you'll see in the answers, there's some interesting things about what could potentially sway people to move into a community. So we look at their outlook on homes and communities. The question was asked, what would be most important to you in deciding where to live? And by age group, it's sliced out here again as 100% scale, diced up. Across the bottom here in blue is proximity to friends and family, which hovers around 20% for every age group. And then on top of that is cost of housing, which is pretty much the biggest piece, and it declines a little bit at the end. And the reason for that is likely that the rate at which people move slows as they age. And so while homeownership is significantly higher as people get older, the rate at which they move declines unless there's a life event that's forcing it. And so, these people that say cost of housing may not really matter because they have no plans to move. And you'll see that in a second. Actually, we asked that question as well. Are you going to move or not? And it's a smaller slice. On top of that is proximity to employment. Not surprisingly, that really begins to slide down at 66 to 70 and then becomes non-existent at 76 to 80. On top of that, we have business environment, which is somewhat of a smaller slice as well. Then proximity to healthcare, which becomes a larger piece of it. Proximity to service and retail, which is pretty much consistent throughout and becomes actually a little more important with age. And then the last piece on the top is the other factor, for whatever their other is. So the question is, are you going to move? And this is the people that are already retired by age group. So the dominant answer is no. I'm going to stay where I'm at. I'm going to stay in my current home. And it's even more significant for people that are with age, right? So our breaking point of 66 to 70, it's 88%, 89%, 90% say I'm staying exactly where I'm at. Then the next is move to another home in the same general area, smaller portion. Move to a new city in Florida, there's some, and then move to a new state. Now, again, there's a lot of people that are 55 and above in the state, so even a small number does matter. And so we've got that in the end. So even if there's a few, small percentage,
We'll take 'em.
yes, yes. It still has a pretty big impact, but the larger portion of people that are already retired plan to stay put. Now, when you ask the people that are working, you see a little bit of a difference here. So when we ask people that are 55 to 60 that are currently working, 64% plan to stay where they're at. And the balance actually plan to move to another home in the central area, move to a new city, or to a new state. So these people have thoughts, when they do retire, that they will be moving. Same thing with 61 to 75. So it's, this is pretty much matched now, that 71 to 75, around the 88, 89% that we saw before, people that say I'm staying. But there's more movement potential in the 55 to 60 and the 61 to 65 of this overall, people that respond to the survey. The question we asked is, would you be influenced by a business-friendly city or town on your location? So the people that are most willing to consider a city or town for a business environment, so we said, if you were going to move, would that sway you? And the 55 to 60 group, almost 20% said, yeah, it could sway me on which city I decided to move to. The larger piece of here, though, is no, and then there's a piece that's not sure. What does that mean? What does that business-friendly environment or town mean? We also asked about intentions to move to an age-restricted community, and this is pretty consistent with what we see nationally of the answer. So 56% of everyone that responded said, no, I do not want to move to an age-restricted community. 23% said yes, that's what I want, and 21% are undecided. And this, again, stacks up pretty well with what we see on the national side when we conduct this same kind of research. When we actually stack it out by age, the percent of respondents that want a 55 plus community, it grows with age. So 66 to 70, 19%, then it's 71 to 75, 28%, and 76 to 80, 25%. So this group is the smaller portion that says, they're the smaller on the absolutely yes. And then there's a portion that says they're unsure, right? So there's 16% that could be swayed, 15% here, 21% of that 66 to 70 that aren't sure, and then 18% 71 to 75, and 13% 76 to 80. So what we want to know is, well, what could sway you? So, if you're considering moving, what would you think? If a community offered office space and technical support, so maybe they've got a genius lab, or genius bar. Just in one, I should remember this.
A bar.
Genius, yes, a bar. I was just in a bar. Just a genius bar. If they had a genius bar, if they had flexible workspace, would this influence you or compel you to think about a 55 plus community? And this was where things got interesting, right? So 55 to 60-year-olds that were the least likely to say, yes, I want to live this type of community, 60% say, yeah, actually, the unsure, yeah, actually, that could sway me. And the same for the 61 to 65-year-olds, actually a little bit higher, that say that could be an influencing factor. And then we see again that employment shift, right, in 60 to 70 with people that are less in the workforce, that it's not as much a swaying factor for those people. So then we asked, how important is it for you to get a dedicated space for home office? Does this have to be its own thing? And 42% said it's not important. Well, 35% said it's somewhat important, 21% said 55% that's, in the very or somewhat important that they want it to be dedicated. And again, this is across all age groups, and knowing that 70% of the people who took this survey are retired. It's kind of interesting that 55% of these people, even though they're retired, even though 70% of the people that are retired, 55% of them said yes, it's somewhat or very important that they have an office. And then we said, well, does it have to be a separate room, or could it be something like a nook in the kitchen? And almost 60% said, no, I want it to be a separate room. It's got to be its own space. And then there's a portion that says it could be shared, and then there's a piece that's unsure. When we asked them, oh, you know what, I took it out. But if you want to know, we actually have it diced out by age too, because it does vary a little by age. And not surprisingly, the younger people want it to be a separate room even more than the people that are a little older. As people get older, they want a niche that's not as important for the separate room. So, question is, what's the impact? What does this mean? So when we look at this and we say, okay, first, the volunteer aspect, we saw that it was about 20%, right? That, you know, and it stepped down a little, but it's a pretty significant portion that plan to volunteer. So if we take all the people that responded and we size them for the state of Florida and that have intentions to volunteer in retirement, it's about 1 million people that want to retire in some capacity, that want to be engaged in retirement. So just in perspective, Orange County has 1.2 million people. So it's almost, you know, just shy of Orange County's total population, not just the 55 plus population. So there's a lot of people and a lot of opportunity to plug these people in, that they want to do this. Second piece here, survey intention suggests about 300,000 adults in Florida may start a business. And over 80% of those, we did ask them too, if you're planning to start a business, would you be willing to collaborate with someone younger, someone under 35? And so our thought is, you know, how do we keep them engaged? How do we know that millennials may not have the money or, you know, have the years of experience, but could they collaborate with boomers? Is there an economic opportunity there? And 80% of them say, yeah, I would be willing to do that. And then the last piece is, and with the good sizing, again, you know, I mentioned before, in Orange County, there's about 270,000 55 plus people. So again, we just think about, you know, this is for the overall state, there are about 300,000 that are interested in starting a business. And it could be more, because if you remember, there's a big part that we're unsure. And then the last piece, over 700,000 plan to pursue part-time work, which may include, again, that independent work that we're saying, no, I'm not starting a business, but I'll do some consulting. So it may translate that way. On the housing side, over 445,000 people that are 55 and above that are retired plan to move within the state, and an additional 315,000 that are currently working plan to move within the state. So that was a question of, are you going to move, or are you going if you move? So, you know, again, we saw those numbers pretty high, people are staying, but if we just take the slice that are planning to move, it's some big numbers up there. Of those that plan to move, 95,000 are that, I'm sorry, of those plan to move, approximately 95,000 are currently retired will seek a 55 plus community, and less than half of people currently working will seek this type of community. And this is where we said, well, you know, the what if, could you be compelled? How could those numbers grow? Significant people that are unsure would be compelled, and if we looked at that, so it would increase it by 71,000 people that are already retired and 37,000 that are still working. If there was something that was put in place to help facilitate that flexible workspace, that genius bar, that framework of people that was listed before, that they had kind of some framework of you know, people that were in the same kind of life stage going through this. So with that, I will hand it over to Diane for the panel. And again, just give me your card, I'm happy to send this presentation out.
I think as Lisa pointed out, this is sort of a snapshot of where we are and trying to look at a trend. You can't really say what's a trend quite yet. I'd love to do this again in, say, 5 years and see how it's built. And especially, we're talking about big numbers here of people who are going to be reaching that bottom edge of moving into retirement. So I think that we're going to start to dramatically see some of these big changes. So there's not a right or a wrong answer. I think what I would like to see today, more of a town hall kind of discussion. You know, what are your thoughts? How could we potentially use this in Central Florida, you know, in your different areas, but how could we as a community provide, you know, maybe economic incentives, what policy changes, what about the built environment, how do we make this an attractive area for a really growing segment of the population? When we put together the panelists here, we were looking at different segments again, because there's so many factors that play into this. So I would like to start by letting them introduce themselves and say what their particular businesses are right now. And then look at the different areas. Please talk to each other, what you're seeing, what you think might be coming along, and how we might be able to just come up with not even an action plan, but just explore the ideas of where we may be going and how we might be able to use it in providing a better community here and economically. Jerry, I'm going to start with you on the end. Jerry Ross is with the National Entrepreneur Center.
My name is Jerry Ross. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur and own several businesses, but now I have the honor and privilege of running the National Entrepreneur Center, where last year we coached and trained over 15,000 businesses face-to-face. We made over $200,000 contacts with business people across the country. So it's a very high volume center to stimulate business growth through education, coaching, and networking.
I think a lot of people, again, even in this area, are not aware of the facilities that we have. And Jerry, you probably are inundated with people, but I think you would be even more inundated if they could
Sure.
see what he has available. And again, we're looking at cross-sections of population that don't necessarily work in the same kind of environment, so it gives an alternative. Monica, I'll turn to you then.
Hello, I'm Monica Stinchula, and I'm here from St. Pete. I'm an entrepreneur as well, but I'm a boomer entrepreneur here to solve a social problem. So my company is called Reunion Care. We use health information technologies to inform families on how to most effectively use their money in the healthcare system. But besides that, I am on AARP's Executive Council. I hope you're all members. And AARP has commissioned us to start the Caregiver Accelerator in communities across Florida. We're creating caregiver ecosystems of new companies to stand up in the community to serve the community.
Pam,
Yes,
Pam.
me. I'm Pam Gezzi. I've lived in Central Florida since 1981. I am a wealth planner. I've had my own practice since 1994. Diane and I have kind of a parallel track. I started out in healthcare, so my training was in healthcare, working in the area hospitals, and changed careers significantly in the mid-90s. My practice is a little different. I like to say I'm different in that I use that wellness approach, that background in psychology to really understand when meeting with individual clients what money means to them, the culture of money, their experience with money, their family history with money. Because if you think about it, the decisions you make around money that shape your life have a lot of past experience influences. And I'm a baby boomer, and I'm looking to my next decade, and my clients are also baby boomers. So I am fortunate to gather some information on their perspective as to what they see in the next chapter.
Deb?
Yes, hey, hi. I'm Deb Martin, and I'm the Director of Sales for Jones Homes USA. But we are actually an international-based builder and developer of residential as well as commercial. So not just in the USA, but throughout the world, mostly in the UK and Portugal. And we just opened an active 55 and better active adult community with over 2,000 homes in the Central Florida area. And I have to say that you are, Lisa, this was the most accurate of all. I'm shoulder to shoulder, face to face with customers every single day in that neighborhood, and you could not have been more on with everything. Statistically, what they're saying, really amazing. It was the best.
Good.
The best. So this is what they're saying. We hear it every day, so that was excellent. Great job.
Yeah.
I'm also a Deb. Deborah Drayman-Ushkowitz. I have been a master plan community developer for most of my career, which is about 25 years. Hey Tom, I didn't see you and recently just went on my own to create my own communities. And so all of the communities I've really catered to have been a full range of housing opportunities. So not specifically 55 plus. So full disclosure, I'm not a 55 plus expert, but I just turned 50 and found out that my peak years of being employed are from now until 55. So I don't know if I should be starting a business right now. I should wait till I'm 55. But just got my AARP card. Didn't order it yet. I'm not sure I'm ready to do that. But I also have a passion about creating authentic places. And the last community I worked on had was in Southwest Florida, and there was a high retiree base there. But we really we were creating a new town versus a 2,000 community. It was really an 18,000 acre community. And so we knew we needed to create things that people could work in, live in, work out in, all of those different things. So I've done a lot of research on the co-working space, and it's really about community. And so this is really fascinating to me on a number of levels, because I feel like the co-working space and the creative workspace really is catered towards the millennials and the tech group, but there's a big range of entrepreneurs that I think could really benefit from it. And I'm not sure it belongs in the master plan community, or I mean in a active adult, but I can see it because I hate single-use spaces. So it'd be interesting to see how this dialogue goes.
Diana?
Hi everyone, I'm Diana Sylvie. I work for the Winter Park Health Foundation, and we are a funder of a wide variety of programs. We have an ambitious mission, which is to create the healthiest community in the U.S., and that means for people of all ages, but the work that I do is with the older adult population. I'm here to talk about health and social well-being.
I'd like to start out, and again, any thoughts or questions, please, anywhere along the line, feel free to interject. But I wanted to start out maybe with asking each of our panelists a question in their particular area, because there's so much overlapping on making a whole concept like this into a community kind of effort. And Diana, let me start out with you. We know that people are living longer, so we're going to see a different kind of retirement coming along. And I know you work with a frail population to a large extent, but are you seeing your thoughts on, is this longevity, deferral into retirement, how does that play into the overall well-being of a person? We've talked about building healthy communities and how that's a holistic approach. That's really, I think, what we're looking at here in trying to make this concept.
Yeah, I think for those of you who haven't been, I guess, deep in the literature or the research lately, there's a strong body of evidence that talks about the impact of social isolation on older adults. And there's been some research that talks about it can really be as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So the goal, obviously, is to keep older adults engaged in community as long as you can, whatever that looks like. Now, certainly we love the idea of them continuing their businesses, starting new businesses. I love to see the volunteer numbers up there, because obviously those are people giving back and helping to mentor young people. We have a number of programs that we support along those lines. It's absolutely important that the communities that we develop, that we create, are healthy in the sense that they allow people to interact. And it's always that real delicate balance of, we know people want to age in place, right? We saw it in their own homes. They don't necessarily want to move, but we can't have them isolated either. So what does that look like in terms of making them stay connected to others that are going to obviously enrich their lives?
Two Debs here. Looking at 55+ master planned communities, what are your thoughts? How has this evolved, and how is it evolving? What do you see coming along? And is there differences that you're starting to notice, preferences with age, with style? Are we still not quite there? Is it growing in popularity, especially in Florida?
I mean, I can't speak to how it's evolved. I can speak to today, where it is and where we believe it's headed. So definitely the majority of the buyer is that younger 60. I will tell you 60 to 65, but a young 60 to 65. And they're not as concerned with, interestingly enough, with their own health as their children are concerned with their health down the road and how they're going to be managed and the facilities that are close by as their parents age. And fitness and wellness is probably number one on the list more than anything. The workforce, it's interesting, they're working, and their biggest reward is that financial reward that comes along with them still being able to work today. So accessibility to the workplaces are key. We're not, I think in the past, everything was curb to curb, transportation and things like that. Today, they're very autonomous, they're very independent. They just want to be able to get to that job that is probably their last job, probably where they're going to pack it in and retire, in a timely, safe manner. And that's what we're finding. And outdoor spaces are absolutely key. And in the home, they definitely want to feel that they can continue their workday, and that they want to feel that sense of independence. But outdoor living spaces are huge, because when they're not working, they definitely are reaping the fruits of their labor in a special way and sort of connecting with the outdoors. And that's what we're finding today, and I think that it continues to go that way. I know in the neighborhood that we've planned for a while, Jim said, you know, I'm here to find out where I'm going. We don't know where we're going. We only know today. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it's exciting and it's fun and it's great. And I think that 55 and better communities have a whole different connotation today than they did in the past, in my opinion. And that's what we get from the customer. That's what they tell us.
So are you,
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. You guys have an elaborate
Our competitor
product
right
offering.
here. Yeah, I got let me
And,
tell you everything.
No, I'm just curious.
Okay.
Have you seen how product is trending towards a certain square footage, product type?
Yeah, without a doubt, and thank God for Kanan and Associates, because they've done an amazing job for us, helping us sort through that and understand where it's all going. But yeah, and we have an array. Our square footages range anywhere from 1,200 and change all the way up to over 4,000. And we do sell an equal amount of all product. So it's interesting, and a lot of it is where they're coming from. And Lisa, again, those statistics are right on. The majority of the buyer, if they're going to move from 55 and up, they're staying within the area. So we haven't gotten that huge out-of-state population. And I think that that's why the different product ranges, you know, anything from a carriage home that's attached to a 50-foot product to a 70-foot product, they all are selling very equally well. It's interesting.
And what I would add to that is, you know, I think it depends on the market that you're targeting, because if you're a GL Homes down in Southeast
Without a
Florida,
doubt.
they're trending much higher square footages.
Yes.
Because those people want a lot of different space. They want, like, my husband's parents want to be able to have the whole family there, even though when we all get there, they're like, get out. So it's hilarious.
And they're also coming more, South Florida, they're coming more from the Northeast. They're coming from New York, they're coming from Long Island, they're coming from Philadelphia. We're getting, you know, Wisconsin, Ohio, and that's GL, Boynton Beach, Delray. They want that. They're coming from a 5,000 square foot home. They will not tolerate anything less than 3,000 square feet. They want spaces for pools, and it is true.
And
a whole different
and I think that's
mindset.
surprising. They're also, I think, you know, the similarities between millennials and boomers, they're very social people. And I think the thing that's
No
changing
doubt.
right now with GL's footprint is that, you know, they kind of just do the same thing and remarket, or actually they use the same brand in lots of different locations. But a lot of them are, the residents are saying, we want a bar. We want to be more social and we want it to be outdoors. And so I think, and they still have big, huge ballrooms that they're trying to do, and it's really sad when you go into these, you know, 30,000 square foot spaces, and they're empty,
totally
and they're only
empty.
used for parties where, and there's some of these really cool co-working spaces, like what WeWork has and some of the others, those things can transform into event halls really
That's
easily.
right.
And so you can have a mixed-use environment, but still give them the big Christmas party in the ballroom setting that they want. And I think that and you know, my husband's parents are older, but they're still extremely social, and they're
Right.
still working. And volunteering doesn't mean you're not working, because you're still
Just
coordinating a team. You still
That's
need
right.
to meet with people. You still need copy services, and so I mean, it is another job. It's an encore career, but you're just not getting paid for it. You're getting it another way. So I think we have to recognize, even if you're not starting your own business, that you're being paid to do, that these people are still working well into their 80s and having. You know, don't give them a closet where, you know, I think the active adult communities used to give them the business center, and you basically felt you're looking at a wall and you go in, and it's like, you know, the hotel one, and even they have really changed. So I think that that's what I'm seeing from the older demographic, as well as for us, since we weren't going to do a gated active adult, you know, highly amenitized resort community down in Southwest Florida, it was all about that sense of purpose. And I think you had mentioned the social isolation, I can't even say it. But I think when people leave a career that they've been in for 20, 25 years, and then all of a sudden they're like, who am I anymore? And, you know, sitting at home and playing golf and stuff. I think having those community spaces that they can have the accidental collisions of running into another entrepreneur and you never know what's going to come up. I think that's going to be really helpful for people's health long term. And that was something that we were trying to create between our wellness center, which was not only for the community, but anybody in the region can come to it, as well as the co-working space. And it was making sure it was for everyone versus just for those people in that community.
I think one of the things to recognize too is the motivational factors behind this particular segment of the population coming into retirement are a lot different than the traditional ones that people had pension plans like my parents had. It's not that way any longer.
Mm-hmm.
We will also be interested in what we can see from the different areas around the state for responses like this. Yes.
So just to add, these are the research you talk basically about a little over half won't consider 55 plus, age restricted, and then there's the other half. And so at Pulte, we sort of see the research the exact same way, kind of like Deb was saying. And so one thing that's interesting is we branch off though and focus on that group that doesn't want to be in 55 plus, but what do they want from that? And it's sort of interesting going online with what you're saying, Deborah. They still sort of, a lot of them still want to be in a community that there's other families around. So some of the ideas we explored with working with developers was actually, what if our phase is age restricted, but you're within a normal community and you all share the same amenities? And so we were surprised how much interest we've gathered in that community. We're getting ready to start selling. But I just think it's really fascinating because we just now are calling it age targeted and just figuring out different ways to execute that. So it's not age restricted, it won't be under the Del Webb brand, but let's say we can figure something else out, and we actually found out through a lot of research that people were open to that. We left it Pulte Homes, but added active adult underneath it, and we're now able to cater to other people. And how that amenity looks is very different among the buyers and markets, because it's like you said, maybe certain portions do want it blown out a little bit more, but just not necessarily that full active adult, or maybe they just actually